I'll start with you, Taly. Where are you originally from?
I'm actually originally from Brazil, but I grew up in Texas. I've been here for a long time, since I was 11. Let's just say that.
And how about you, Fran?
I am from Brazil as well, but Taly basically ordered me online, and I ended up here in Texas. We met online, and we got married. We had this discussion who was gonna move, but she grew up here. We were like, well, let me just give it a year and see how it goes. And being completely transparent with you guys, I hated it. I really wanted to go back, but because I just had to learn everything from scratch. You know, I was 19.
English skills?
Yes, English, culture, everything. And I had a really nice job in Brazil, and I came here and I had to start from scratch, doing stuff that I could do, like delivering pizza, whatever I could do, because I couldn't do anything else. And so that was really hard. And after about a year or so, maybe 2 years, I was like, okay, because I was already doing technology stuff. And then I could see the benefit, and I was like, okay, it makes sense. Everything happens here before it happens there. And back then, things would take a while before it got to Brazil. So I could see things happening faster in here. That's when I started like, okay, it makes sense for me to be here. And so that's the story.
And there's and I could be wrong, but isn't there kind of like a booming tech scene in Brazil, kind of? I don't know a whole lot about it, but I know my brother-in-law works for an international company, they do like two-factor authentication stuff, but he has gone to Brazil multiple times for whatever he does.
Yeah, that makes sense. My last startup was in Brazil, and it's basically, and it's funny because we started here in the US, and one of our investors, they were basically saying, man, Brazil is basically going through the Cambridge explosion of technology. Why don't you move your stuff to Brazil? And we kind of did an experiment, and the growth there was just ridiculous, and it made sense for us to just pivot. And so we worked on. I worked on that startup for the past 4 years and a half until now, basically.
And what was that startup?
It was a startup focused on solo professionals. So before I get to that, I kind of have to give you the background because otherwise It won't make sense. But I've been building startups since I can remember. The previous startup before that one, I built it with Taly. It's a platform that's still up and running. It's called Viralon, focused on beauty professionals. And it basically provides a website, a way for people to book an appointment and so forth. And so when the opportunity came to build this other startup with a group of fantastic people, really awesome founders, the benefit for me of jumping into this new idea was really the group of people that I was getting involved with, and I really wanted to do that and have that experiment. And so we built this platform that's similar to what we had here, that's focused on solo professionals, helping people book appointments with them, and having them have a website online and things of the sort, payments and so forth. And we started doing it here, like I mentioned. And then eventually we pivoted to Brazil because it made sense at the time. So I've always been involved in this. It's SaaS, software as a service. And so I've always been involved in that kind of building SaaS for different things, but it's always around the same thing, focused on appointments, serving the individuals that are building business by themselves, basically.
Cool. Yeah. So it sounds like you've been doing it for a long time. So that probably gave you a leg up into starting Northflow, and which is why we're here. And Taly, but I love to hear your story like that, but because that's cool. Because that it's funny how everyone's past leads you to where you are today. It's just interesting to hear people's stories about that and how it all worked together, and you moved to the US, and Brazil had that tech scene to get involved in. But so Taly, were you tech centric, or were you more user based? How did you two come up with the idea? Was it you and then Fran did the tech, or what was that combination like?
It was basically a combination of a bunch of things. I always like to say that I've been a podcast hoarder for the past few years. So I actively listen to at least 10 different podcasts that I'm trying to listen to at least, whenever it comes out right away. And I actually heard about like some podcasters having issues, like basically getting all of their tools to work together. And I brought the issue to Fran and Nato. He's also one of our co-founders, and Simona too. But at the time, it was just me, Fran, and Nato. And we started just like exploring, like, how could we possibly solve this issue? Like, my background is in user experience design and just like overall doing like user experience and understanding like some of the user pains and trying to figure out a solution. Like, I'm just like a natural problem solver. I see things happening and I want to fix it. Even like walking down the aisle on grocery store, I see issues and I'm like, how can we make this better? So that's kind of like how Northflow, the whole idea started about a little bit over a year ago.
But who was like first? Was it, so it was like you, and then you're like, Fran, you got to get to work building this? Or no?
We were exploring a few different industries at the time.
Okay.
So like the podcast was like, I would look at it and I was like, that's a cool, industry to be part of. And so we were in between, I think, like 3 different things. And the other stuff was nice, but it was like a bit boring, a little bit more on the boring side. So we started talking like, maybe we could just start talking to people and figure out if the podcast industry would be the one to go.
Cool. It's so funny you said you have multiple things like going on, because I feel like tech people are like that. Like they always have like, an idea for a website or an app or some kind of tool. So it's cool that you were thinking like that, like very entrepreneurial, like, we've got these ideas, maybe we could build X, Y, or Z, but then you really honed in on the podcast thing and you're like, let's do this. It's a good industry to be a part of too. I mean, it's growing and there's a lot of need for different types of tools and services. So that was a good choice, I would say. But tell us, what is Northflow? Just for someone who's never heard of this, like what is Northflow?
Cool. I can take this one. So the idea for Northflow right now is to be the home base for any creator or any agency that's providing creative work. And so there's a lot of ground to cover, but we're starting with the pre-production phase. And we know that when it comes to podcasting, there is multiple phases. And we know that pre-production is always going to be there. Planning, scheduling, talking to people so that you can maybe book a guest or something of the sort, all of that stuff. And then there's also storing files, there's also involving other people in editing and all of that, and then there's distribution. And so the way we divided this was in 3 phases: the production and distribution. And so we started tackling the pre-production phase, which is basically organizing things into one place, because that's where we felt like the biggest problem was, at least at the time, after talking to, I don't even know how many people. We talked to a lot of people and kind of going through their process. In fact, we talked to you as well. I don't know if you remember that.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
You showed us.
Yeah,
you showed us your workflow. And one of the things we noticed was things are basically spread out in many different places. Like assets will be Google Drive, Dropbox, and then the tasks itself will be on Trello, Notion, somewhere else, and then the editing will be on this script, and things will be basically everywhere. And so the idea is really to basically bring everything into one place and talk to the best people in the industry to figure out what's the best workflow. And then instead of having each person try to figure out, connect, and duct tape all the solutions from different places, kind of have that workflow in one place and provide those best workflow and best practices in one single place. So it's not just one product, it's a product that brings the knowledge of how to do this the best way possible. And so that's kind of what we did there. So we spent a lot of time talking to the best people we know in this industry. And that's one of the reasons why Simona is with us today. And so, yes. And then we got all of that and we started building workflows. And again, we know there's a lot of ground to cover still. We're building slowly. But the idea is really to have that stuff pre-set up. So imagine you starting a podcast today, and instead of trying to figure out every little thing that you need to do, you kind of have a workflow set up and you can choose the one that makes sense for you. So this way you start and you know exactly what you need to do. And so that's kind of the direction we're going. And right now we're focused on the pre-production phase, where it's planning creating. And so there's going to be a little bit of AI, but trying to make sure that AI is an assistant and not someone that's going to take your work away from you, in a sense of taking your creativity and taking the part that's meant for you to do, basically the creation part. And so the AI, the way we're trying to embed it into the product, is focused on being an assistant. And so and we're trying to embed it in many different ways as well. Eventually there will be an AI assistant that will do different things. I'm not going to go too far into that. We can if you want to, but and so it's not just the AI, but the automation as well. So what are some of the things that you have to do it every single time you launch an episode, but it's just repetitive? How can we take that away and make sure that it's done for you by itself? And so that's kind of what we've been doing, trying to figure out what's the best way, what are the best workflows, and have that preset as a preset for anybody that wants to either start a podcast now, or is managing multiple podcasts, or basically is starting as a creator, basically.
Yeah, speaking of AI, it's funny because I feel like I've gotten into deep with all of them, and now I feel like it actually kind of has taken some of my abilities away. Like I feel like if I had to write multiple paragraphs now about whatever topic, I've relied so heavily on ChatGPT to write me stuff. Now I feel like I can't even think for myself on how to write like a email, like a basic that might be a little extreme, but to write, I used to write a ton of blog posts and articles, and now I'm like, how did I ever do this without ChatGPT? But then I get nervous because I'm like, damn, I need to use my brain more and stop asking it for all this shit that I could probably come up with on my own. You become dependent on it. So I know what you mean there with that. And we can talk more about AI. It's a buzzword, every tech, every tool. It's like you have to have AI. But so totally. Or Taly or Fran, whoever. So what is different about Northflow than other project like a Trello or Monday.com, or how is it different, and how is it geared for podcasters?
That's a really good question. Taly, you want to go first?
Sure. So
Taly, let's hear from you.
Yes, I'm usually the quiet one. So basically the main difference, if we were to put it comparing, let's say, Trello or Notion, the main difference is we removed all the extra stuff that a lot of these platforms have that could be a little overwhelming for some people. And we really try to build it based on the real feedback we were getting from podcasters. So the platform itself, it's similar in some ways, but without all of the extra noise that a platform like Notion or Trello or even ClickUp would normally have. So it's really focused on the naming of certain features. It's all focused on the creator industry in general, like podcasters or even YouTubers.
Yeah, totally.
Go ahead.
Just to add to it real quick. And one of the biggest things is you can do anything you want to with a tool like Notion, for instance. Notion is so beautiful and flexible. I really, really love Notion, and Taly knows I'm a Notion fanatic. I do everything on Notion. But here's the problem though. Notion, when you're creating a process that involves multiple people, multiple steps, it becomes very complex and very easy to break. And that's when the nightmare begins. Because at first, when it's just you and it's just a few things that you're doing, it's beautiful and it works flawlessly. And you can be creative, create all that stuff. But a lot of people won't be that tech savvy. A lot of people rather just focus on what they need to do. Instead of managing the tool, they want to manage what they need to do. And so that's the issue with a lot of the tools out there. They're so flexible that it becomes very complex. And what we're trying to do is take the complexity away and bring the best practices just already out of the box in a way that you don't have to figure out how to connect this with that, creating a database that is a relational database with this or that. It's already there, and it just makes sense because it's the best practices that's being used by the best people in this industry.
And Fran actually has an interesting story with Notion because he sent, I don't know, probably 3 or 4 years ago whenever Notion came out, he's been the number one user because he knows all the tricks and all. But he eventually, he tried a different platform, a few years ago too, but it's probably been a year or so. And he had this whole okay, Notion is great, but what I need to do, it made more sense using linear in this case, like for product.
Yeah, it kind of it was a tough realization that, but I loved Notion, but I realized that because Linear did just exactly what I'm telling you. For product people, they got all the best practices out of Notion, out of all the other tools that people use for product development. And they just said, well, we're going to get all the best practices. We're going to remove everything else. And here it is. You just use this. And so when we started using Linear, I started using Linear because I test every single product I can get my hands on. That's a common thing from, any product person. We're going to log in, create accounts, play around. And I started playing around with Linear. And it's funny because all that stuff that I had to work so hard to make it work on Notion, it was just out of the box. And it made a lot of sense. In fact, I would say that a lot of the inspiration between what we're doing and Notion and all the other tools, that it came from Linear, because Linear they were able to basically get the best practices and put it in a way that it just makes sense for someone that's managing a product with a team or multiple products and so forth. So yeah, I forgot about that one, Taly.
Yeah, I have used a couple of them, honestly, and I kind of like what you're saying there, where it kind of just makes it easy and it breaks down, it kind of gets rid of all the stuff you don't need and focuses on what you do. Because I've used a few of them, and I always, my problem is like I'll always kind of get like up and running and excited, and then I'll realize like, dude, I have to learn a whole new like software right now, and like I don't have the time, or like I don't want to, and I get confused. Like I would always get confused. This is an old team I was on. We used to use Trello for a podcast. We've used Monday.com. I've used Asana. Like I'm always like, dude, I have to like learn how to use it, which is like time consuming, and then I get frustrated. And so I like that. And now Linear, is that a type of like project management, or is that an actual tool?
It's a project management tool for people building products. And
Okay.
if you have a development team, if you have a designer team, all of that, and today I still use Notion, but I use Notion as a way to document things.
People love Notion. I've never used that, but I hear about it all the time.
Yeah, I don't think I will ever stop using Notion, but for certain things, it just makes sense to use something else. So Notion, to me, it replaced other things such as Google Docs, for instance. It's so much better. It's very intelligent, and you can do so much more. But when it comes to managing tasks and things of the sort, it's great. It can be done if it's just you. But it's going to be messy when you start bringing a lot of people, and especially if you bring somebody that's new and they move one table and they break one little relational database, everything else goes to hell. And so that's why it's really hard. Well, when you're using a product that's specifically for that thing that you're doing, you can't break it. Unless there's a bug which is fixable, but it's already set up that way. It's built for it. And that's the thing with most products, that project management systems, they're built horizontally. They're trying to help everyone, and it works for the most part. But what we're trying to do is focus on that specific niche and that specific problem. So this way we get all, like I mentioned, and I know I'm repeating myself a lot on this, but we're just trying to get the best practices and putting that into one product, as opposed to just, giving you so many ways to do the same thing that it becomes a hassle every time you do it.
No, that makes sense. And I'm excited for you guys. I know it's kind of like in a soft launch right now, if I'm correct. And there's going to be a lot of I'm already seeing like a lot of buzz and stuff I'm friends with Simona, so from her, and I've seen your podcast, Taly, which we'll talk about at the end, but I'm excited to learn more about that as well. But one question I had because it was kind of an issue when we were using those other project management tools, and even I use Slack regularly. It can be an issue with Slack as well, is file sizes, because typical employees, I don't know, like office jobs and stuff, they're usually not dealing with large files. Maybe they're mostly, I don't know, Word doc. I haven't had an office job in years, but like Office, Microsoft Office, Excel, not massive files. Like podcasters are using audio and video files, and they can be large. So how are you guys working within that? Or can you upload larger size files? Is that in the works, or is it already a thing? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, that's a really good question, because that's one of the things people have been asking every time they start using the product. They notice we have a very small limit, and the reason why is it's
got to be tough, like getting the server space or the cloud space. I don't even know how it works, but like that's
well, it's actually, that part it's not that hard. I think the thing for us is it's so early in the process that we don't even know what our unit of economics is. So we don't know what to charge for it. We don't know how much space a show will need on a regular basis. So it's hard for us to price it or to. So basically, what we will end up doing is just open the doors and make it all like unlimited, so that we can then start gauging and having an idea. But the other thing that we're doing is we're looking at the problems we can solve, and we're looking at it like, is there any other product that's doing it way better than what we can do? Because if there is, instead of just trying to reinvent the wheel, why don't we integrate with them and make it easy for the information to flow between these two platform? And if you look at this script, Google Drive, Dropbox, they do it really well. They have the app that you install it, you have the stuff in there, and so forth. So we're in discussion and trying to figure out what would be best, if it's to integrate with what is already there, make it easy for you to upload it from Northflow, download it from Northflow if you need to, or if we build this thing ourselves, because it's going to cost to build a feature that's already out there, that's already being solved and really well done. Do we really want to solve a problem that's already being solved, or do we want to basically be part of the solution and add on to it? And so we're in discussion trying to figure out what's the best way to go about this. But right now we have a very small limit, and we're trying to figure out, and eventually we're just going to open the doors and watch it and learn, because we're really in this phase of watching our users. In fact, that's one of the things we're doing. We're literally working with them and being part of their agencies, like doing things, because we need to feel the pain. And if it's not working for you, we want to feel it too, so that we can say, well, that sucks, we need to fix it. And so that's one of the things we're doing. And Taly noticed it, and she's like, well, we don't have enough limit here, we need to fix it. And then Simona was like, it makes no sense for me to upload file by file when I can just go to Google Drive and upload everything at once. And then that's where we take our learning from. Then we go back to the drawing board, and we're like, do we want to solve this problem? So right now, it looks like we're just going to do a really nice integration that makes sense, because people are already using the script, Drive, Google Drive, Dropbox. We don't want to change that. We want to integrate in a way that it makes sense, and you can go into Northflow and find anything you need from there. But things can flow more easily. That's kind of the idea right now. It might change. It depends on what we learn, in the next few months.
I like that you guys are getting feedback from podcasters, from YouTubers, whatever it is, like people creating content, because that's probably the right thing to do, because like they're the ones that would be using it, or they're the ones that kind of know. We can give feedback on what's needed. What have you guys seen, like, for the podcasters and the teams and stuff you've talked to? What is like the biggest bottleneck for podcast production teams? Like, I kind of know what mine is with the people I work with. But I'm curious, like, what kind of stuff have people told you? Like, what are they looking for?
Cool. I don't know, Taly, you want to go first?
Sure. I could go first. So one of the things that I've, like, and we've talked to so many people, but one
Have
of
you?
Yes, like the past year and a
Good.
half.
I like that. Yeah.
I feel like we probably talked to at least 100 people, like just on the weekly basis. We talk to an average of 2 to 3 people, and just giving demos and getting their feedback, kind of like what we did with you a few months ago. But one of the things that I mostly hear about is when dealing with guests, right? Like, I'm trying to get a guest on my show. I'm trying to like email them, trying to get them to reply. Sometimes like they have a form that they need to fill out. So try to get that guest to fill out the form to provide the information. Sometimes get them like to send a headshot, but like that tag of like trying to figure out what works best, like time wise, like when is the best time to record. Another I would say this is another common one too, would be working with different people. Let's say like a podcast agency, they have like multiple people they're working with. Just being able to pass over a task without having to upload all of those assets to that new task that you're creating as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think with guesting, there could be a lot in there, especially like a lot of guests now, or not all of them, but the ones who like are actively want to help you promote. Like if you have social media clips and stuff, and like a way to share those with them, maybe in the platform, instead of having to like email them out to the person, you can like send them a link and be like, all the stuff is here.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
and that's
yeah.
something we're looking at right now. And to add to what Taly was saying, there's a lot of people also that they've tried a lot of tools, they couldn't get it to work, and they went back to Excel sheet because they couldn't
Like me.
get other stuff to work. And that's, to me, that's the ideal case scenario, because like they have a workflow, and it's funny because most of the people that are using Excel sheet, they have a very similar workflow, but it doesn't fit with other platforms, and so they can't make it work, and so they go back to Excel sheet because it makes more sense to them. And I'm like, this is a nice pattern for us to look into. And the next thing is, there's a lot of people, especially agencies, that are creating content for a client. They will send a form that's connected with Zapier, that's connected with something else, that when a client fill out the form, it triggers Zapier that will do something else, that goes somewhere else. And it has all this series of things. And then if one of those little things break in the middle, then nothing works. And so what we're trying to do is like, how can we bring all that flow into one place and make it automated so that you don't have to, it's already there, it's out of the box. And so we're just now launching this feature that's connected to episodes. So if your client wants to suggest an episode, they can go into that form, and I'm just giving you an example of a workflow that could work with that feature. They can fill out that form that already creates an episode, and inside that episode, that's using a template that has all the tasks and all the assets. So this way, you're not doing that work manually, or you're not connecting 5 different tools to make that happen. But every once in a while, we'll also talk to someone that's super savvy, and I'm going to have to mention this person. So we spoke with this lady, Megan, and man, she's so tech savvy, and she's a Notion fanatic just like me. And so we just connected really well. We're just talking about the features and everything else. But at the end of the day, we agreed with the fact that it's awesome. Notion is great, but then there's the fact that you're always adjusting, and you're spending, in our case, like our Friday night trying to make that thing work, when it could just be out of the box. And so managing automated stuff with Zapier is a problem. Using multiple tools that they're not directly connected is also a problem. And the guest onboarding process is also a problem. So those are the things that we're looking at right now.
Yeah, Zabier's kind of like, I'm not super familiar with it, but my understanding is kind of like the middleman, right, between like task, and you can trigger it to have it can trigger stuff. So yeah, getting rid of that makes a whole lot of sense. Is your guys, like, I know you're still kind of, like you mentioned, in that pre-production phase. Is your target customer more like the creative, like individual, like YouTube channel podcast person, or more to like podcast agencies with like bigger teams, or both? Or are you still trying to figure out like your target customer, like the corporate guy, or like the individual creator?
Yeah, we're trying to figure out what's the best way to go. But right now, the way we're looking at it, we're looking at the agencies.
Yeah,
because
that's where
a
the
lot
money
of
is. I sold my soul a long time ago.
Because And the reason why I say this, it's because only that person that's managing multiple people, multiple podcasts, they
Right.
will know the benefit of
they
a
would need
productivity tool.
too. Yeah.
Now, when a guy is doing it or a gal is doing it by themselves, they can say, you know what, I don't need to pay for a tool for this because I can kind of manage it myself.
Sure.
And it makes sense, right? At this stage, it's okay for you to, it's easier. But when you have 5 shows that you're managing 4 people, then it becomes a little more complex. And that's one of the things that's really hard for us is like, how do you price productivity? Because that's what that's what we're selling, productivity. And the biggest problem we have with that, it's because when you're selling a productivity tool, you have to work with people that are focused on getting things done and efficiently.
Right.
Because some people, they're trying to save money by doing it themselves. Well, some other people are trying to make money by having something else or automating the process or so forth. And so we're trying to really identify what would be the group of people that are be focused on, I want to save time so I can make money instead of I'm going to save money by doing it myself. Right. And so that would be, if I had to give you an ICP right now, like what is your ideal customer profile? It would be the people that are producing podcasts and they're trying to save time and just try to be productive and fast.
And also some networks. We've been talking to a couple of networks to see how we could possibly leverage, like how we have Northflow set up to make it work for all of their shows as well.
Yeah, I was gonna say like kind of people that do what I do, where we have like a podcast agency, but yeah, also the networks, like whatever it is, Wondery or Spotify or Podcast One, whatever it is. Yeah, like that. I could see those type of people getting a lot of value and being able to integrate it. Because yeah, right now there's not really. I mean, there's not really like a one system for how shows are made and produced and how teams work together. I've worked with so many different teams, and it's like, yeah, some people use Dropbox. Almost everyone uses Slack for chatting. But yeah, Google Drive, another client that uses Google Drive. Frame.io. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but you can leave notes when the audio file's playing. You can, like, if the customer wants to edit it, they can leave notes like with the time code. Like, I have one client that uses that. Another client that uses Box, not Dropbox, but Box. So yeah, there really isn't one way that people do it. Whereas other industries, and I guess maybe because podcast is sort of newer, it's not really that new anymore, but like it's kind of more booming. So there's a lot of different stuff people are figuring out. Whereas in other industries, it might be a little more solidified. But since it's also like a creative thing, like everyone's got like their way of how to do it.
Yeah, totally. And most of the tools you mentioned, they're like right in the production phase, right? The files, the editing, and if we go one step,
interesting. That's the production. You guys
before
right now
that
are
phase, you go,
yeah.
If you go into the pre-production, it's going to be the same way. The client might use Trello, but you use, I don't know, ClickUp, and then someone else along the lines of that process will be using something else. So it becomes kind of messy, and it's messy because there isn't a way to solve that problem right now, and that's why people end up going back to Excel sheet, because it's just easier to just manage that one thing. And so I think there's an interesting opportunity for us to play with this, especially because I don't assume that we know all the workflows and the best way to solve this. But like Taly mentioned, and she's really good at this, like we've been able to talk to a lot of great people and learning and improving the product. One of these days we were talking to someone, Pamela, and she's like, well, I would really need to see this into a calendar. And so that same day I went back to the team and we're like, we need to build a calendar for this. And 2 days later we had a calendar. So the idea really is to build this for people and not charge anything right now, because we're just learning and try to make sure we're building something that's going to take things out of your hands. And so we're just in this super fast-paced learning process where we're just talking to people and building. And the only downside with fast-paced processes is that sometimes you can make some mistakes here and there. And last week we had a case, funny enough, using Zapier. And it happens, sending invitation to the wrong people and things like that. It happened. It sucked, but I mean, there's not one startup in the world that won't have a scenario like this. So,
Right.
the point is, we're just in this phase of learning, and we know that pre-production is an issue. Then there's a second phase, which will be the production. And in production, and when we talk about production, there's so many tools that are great, and we don't want to solve that problem because, like Framer, for instance, Frame. It's a great tool. I mean, I don't want to compete with those guys. I don't want to compete with the script. I mean, they're awesome. Riverside, I love Riverside. I don't want to compete with them. But the question for us is, how do we integrate with them? So when things are being done there, it's already being checked off on Northflow and triggering the next stuff and sending notification to the next person that will do the next thing. And so that's kind of how we're looking at it. And then there's the post-production and distribution. So can we do something there? Can we automate things there? Do we integrate? Do we build this? And so that's kind of the phase we're in now. It's just really learning and implementing as fast as we can.
So eventually, depending on how things go, that is the plan. Like pre-production, then integrate some of the production, post-production, maybe somehow then for distribution, connect with the hosting providers or whatever it is. Like, so I see. So, okay. So yeah, pre-production now, and then as it grows and as you get more established, the goal would be to integrate that stuff and become like the player in the podcast world that it's kind of like an all-in-one type of tool. That's cool, man.
Yeah, if I had to give you a future vision of what
give me a timeline. Give me a timeline,
yes,
Fran.
it would be so. It would
a lot
be
of work.
Something,
Sounds like a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot
of
of work, and it takes a lot of funding too. And we're bootstrapped, so we got to do it slow. But if I could give you a final vision, that can be changed. It depends on how it goes. But it would be this home base where everything starts there and it ends there. So you might go here and there, but you can start from here and it's connected to the script. So this way you can go to the script and you do your stuff. But when it's done, it updates Northflow and it triggers notification and so forth. And once you're done with that, then you can do distribution that goes to the hosting, that goes to social media. And you have this one control place. It's a control center where things are coming in and out of, and this way you're not looking at a whole bunch of different tools so you can see what's going on. You have that one single tool where you see what's happening at all stages. So that's really the view and the focus for us to do now. And so we're just having to do it slowly, focusing on pre-production, task management, asset management, guest and forms, and possibly a website. We're launching a feature now that's basically a basic website, and we will improve upon what we're launching now, but there will be a lot more coming. But we're basically doing this pre-production phase now, but the ultimate goal is to continue building upon this and making sure that people will be able to sit in front of Northflow and see what's going in and out, publishing and distributing stuff. And repurposing is something that's super easy to build. There's tons of product out there that's doing repurpose. The question for us is, do we build or do we integrate? What do we do in this scenario? The benefit of building is that we can charge one price. You're not concerned about paying a different platform to do repurposing. It's all done in one place. And so we're really, in fact, we're actually talking to other startups too and being like, hey, you guys do this really well. How can we work together? Because that's one thing, Eric. In the bootstrap world, a lot of people feel like they have to compete. And like, I found this guy. He's doing something similar. Let's go compete. And to me, it's more like, how can we share this space and make sure that we work well together? Because you're doing something awesome here. How can we get what you're doing, mix it with what I'm doing, and make it so awesome that users will be like, because what we're trying to build is an ecosystem, not just a product. Think of Apple, for instance, and I always give this example. A lot of people say, I don't like Apple, and that's fine. I'm not going to say Apple has the best products in the world, but one of the things that we cannot deny is that they have a great ecosystem. Yeah. You have a headphone. In fact, I had the AirPod Max. That's my biggest disappointment with Apple. I bought this less than a year ago, and it's dead. It won't work anymore. It broke my heart. But it was one of the best headphones I had. And the one good example of the ecosystem is that I'm here talking to you and I'm done. I'll play Spotify, then I'll move out and it knows that I'm leaving my computer. It will connect to my Spotify on my phone. That's because it's all part of the same ecosystem. So when you buy stuff that's part of the same ecosystem, things will work seamlessly. And so the idea really is to build an ecosystem, not just within Northflow, but working with other SaaS companies that can integrate with us and make things work in between them so seamless that it's easy. It's not going to be that hassle that you do things in here and you have to go manage there. It's all done and communicating perfectly among itself. So instead of competing, we would love to partner, and that's why we've been talking to a lot of other SaaS companies. In fact, at PodFast, we went to PodFast and we were able to connect with a lot of folks there that are also building great tools. And we're like, how can we work together? How can we build this together? And so that's really the idea, to build an ecosystem for creators and agencies.
Yeah, it sounds like you guys are on the right track, especially going to PodFest. Like, that's big. And before I hit record, we talked about podcast movement coming up. That's always, those are great places to be, great places to meet other founders and other companies in the space. Taly, tell me, how do you do it all with kids? I know we talked on Instagram for a minute. You guys have how many kids?
We have 3. Yeah, we have an 11-year-old, 6-year-old, and a 3-year-old.
Wow. And do you guys get help? I like talking to founders and people that work in business and stuff that have kids, because it's a totally different, it's just totally different. You can't really go as hard as you want to, or maybe sometimes you do, but then it like kind of neglects the kids. Like I'm a kind of a new dad. I mean, my daughter's about to turn 3. The other one, 2 daughters, girl dad. The other one is about to turn 1. And I've found that I've had to slow down a little bit or just re-strategize kind of. So how are you doing with that?
It does take, well, I like, it's
11 is chill. Right? 11,
yeah,
just
11,
go watch TV.
She got it. She can, like, right now she's actually outside with both of them, just hanging out, running after the chickens. So, it's
chickens.
Nice. Yes, we do have chickens.
You guys have chickens too.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. And too many cats too.
Do you live? I imagine where you live, people have a lot of big lots, right? Like,
yeah, we have a little bit of a acreage, and we're really out in the country, and we have plenty of space for all sorts of animals. Yeah.
So they, whenever we're doing different calls like this, they like to hang out outside. Just, it's a beautiful day, so it's nice to be out. But overall, like on the day-to-day, just, being able to do a startup and also have the kids around, we try to get them to be part of what we do as much as we can, of course. But like my daughter, for example, she's been helping us with some of the social media stuff that we do for Northflow. Just try to always get them to, to understand what we do, because even on their own little world, they're able to, throw in a comment, or they would say things like, oh, I was listening to this and this podcast, and, maybe you guys could do that on Northflow. Sometimes it makes no sense, but just the fact that they know what we do. And also, like, now that we have Behind the Workflow, like, Fran has been on it, and they listen to us, like, on YouTube. They're like, you're on YouTube. That is so cool. So just being able to really integrate them to our day-to-day and overall, like, our business, it's been really cool to, to have that relationship with them where they're seeing that we also have dreams and we're going after it. I think it just gives them like something to look up for in the future for themselves as well.
Yeah, I used to produce a show. I don't anymore. It was with the founder of Tap Out Clothing, which is, I don't really watch a whole lot of UFC, but it was like a early days UFC Tap Out. It was like a clothing company, and him and his wife, he sold it, or something happened. I think it ended poorly, but they're super successful, like entrepreneurs. They've got like other businesses. They actually take their, like, kind of what you were saying, integrating the kids. They do that. Like, they even talk about it. They have a podcast now. they bring the kids to like meetings and stuff and have them sit in the meetings and like they're like super into it. I don't think they're quite 11, maybe like 7 or 8 or something like that. But I like that. I like the concept of getting them involved and just showing them like what hard work is and what you can achieve. It's inspirational, and ideally they learn something. And then from your guys' standpoint, like, it's funny what kids say. Like maybe they do come up with good ideas. Other times maybe it's like silly or whatever. But I think there's just a lot of good things that could happen there for them and for you guys. And as we kind of start rounding home here, tell me about Simona. So I know you brought Simona on board fairly recently. How did that come about? And just for the audience, I know Simona we're in a Discord like mastermind thing that meets every week. And so that's how I've never met her in person, but we're like virtual friends.
We actually got to meet her in person at PodFest for the first time. And we've been working together for, I think we're getting close to a year now. Like over the summer was last year when we got her part of the Northflow crew. Funny enough, this is like our internal joke. I actually sent an email to Simona, I don't know, like a year and a half ago, and she never opened my email. And it was just like, hey, Simona, this is Taly. We're starting Northflow. I wanted to talk to you just to get your feedback on, similar to what we did with you and some odd podcast agencies. And she never replied my email. She actually, I had to reach out to her on Instagram. And we had a demo. We showed her the product, and we just like I like to mention that like our energy, I guess, in a way, she likes to use that term too. It just matched.
Well, she loves those kind of terms.
yes. So we just had that same energy, and like we liked what she's currently doing with her agency, and also like how she's always she's been part of the podcast industry for a while, and we really wanted to have someone on our team that fully understood like the whole process and like been in the industry for I think she's been in the industry for close to 8 years or so, something around that. So it was nice to be able to get her to like, I understand what Northflow is solving. I also have some of those issues. So I want to be part of the team that solves for that. So we're really excited to have her, and it's been a great value for our team for sure.
Yeah, I think it's a good match, and what she brings to the table, I'm excited for how you guys will collaborate and some of her ideas moving forward into the future. So tell me about the podcast you have with Simona. It's kind of goes under the Northflow banner. Is that right? Like a piece of marketing material?
Somewhat, yeah.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah, so it's called Behind the Workflow. And the whole idea, and we just started, so I think we're like 4 episodes in, and we're also releasing our bi-weekly updates under that podcast. So everything that's going on Northflow, we usually do like just a quick update explaining some, features that we launched, some of the bugs we're solving, and so on. But for the podcast, I told Simona, like, I want to feel like I want to understand what a podcaster goes through.
Yes.
So we started using Northflow to work on the podcast, and we actually noticed a few things that we probably wouldn't notice on the day-to-day basis because I wasn't using it before. But now that I'm using it, it's been interesting to see those little things that sometimes we may overlook, right? But the podcast itself is focused like on, eventually we're going to have guests and be able to like understand what they're behind the curtains is. Like if you have an agency, what are some of the things that you usually struggle with? And just like we want to do like raw content where we're hearing what they're struggling with, but also how they were able to fix a problem that they might be having on their agency. So we're not there yet, but that's the goal for that show.
I started, I like how you said to kind of get in there and see what it's really like being a podcaster and how it works and what you need and problems and solutions. I actually started this podcast a couple years ago. I had been working in podcasts since 2015, and in my background, I'm an audio engineer. But even prior to that, working here in LA in studios as an audio person. But I was giving all this podcasting advice and stuff to people, and then I was like, dude, I don't even have a podcast. Like, I'm trying to talk about something that, like, yeah, I kind of know about like the audio production, but like I don't have a podcast. So I was like, I got to start one just so I like know what I'm talking about.
Yep.
So I think that's important. I think that's important as a founder and as someone who's growing this content management tool. I think that will just continue to help you because you'll actually know. Before we wrap up here, guys, Fran, give me one podcast people should listen to that you enjoy listening to. What it could be about any topic.
Oh, there's two. First off, as it relates to podcasting with Simona, it's funny because I make fun of her because we use that podcast for every task that we make, and within Northflow we use as it relates to podcasting with Simona. So that's the first one. The second one, I like one that's AI, the weekly. I won't remember exactly the name, but it's AI weekly news. Where it's really just updates on AI and the new stuff that's coming out. And if I had to say a third one, it's Y Combinator, and it's all focused on product and technology, but that's the kind of stuff I consume on the day-to-day.
Okay, I'll list those in the show notes. Yeah, that AI one sounds interesting. I'll find it, and I'll be sure to list it. Y Combinator. It's interesting you said that. I listened to a show called Marketing School with Neil. Are you familiar with Neil Patel? He's like a marketing guy. Him and his co-host talk about Y Combinator. I don't even know what it is. Is it like what is that?
It is an incubator for tech companies.
That's
so
what I thought.
So there's a lot of big startups that came out of there, such as Stripe, Airbnb. So they're really great, and it's really a hub of a lot of great people building great companies. And they have a lot of insights since I was involved with so many different startups. And there's always Paul Graham, which is like the OG of startups and SaaS. Like it's the guy that's always giving essays and always giving people advice on how to build startups and so forth. So the benefit of listening to their podcast is really to see the things that are hot right now, that's making sense, that's working, and that helps you also make decisions as if you're building an AI wrap and you want to make sure that there's the stuff that you're doing, it's going to continuously work like a year or 2 years from now, and they always bring news that will make sense for you to look into and be like, okay, it makes sense for me to do that because they're not going anywhere. So
cool. And Taly, give me one that you listen to that you think people should check out.
I like to listen to The Equity. It's called Equity. They're from TechCrunch. It's similar to what the one that Fran was talking about, the Y Combinator one, but they go over like some of the startups that are working, some of the startups that didn't go as well. So that would be that's probably the one I've been listening to the most since I started listening to podcasts a few years ago. I think they're getting close to 1,000 episodes.
Awesome. And do you guys, and just out of curiosity for myself, what platforms do you guys listen? Are you audio people, or do you like to watch on YouTube? Like, where do you guys consume podcasts?
I started just on like Apple Podcasts. Recently, I've been using Spotify, but I don't quite like it. And your podcast, I've been actually watching on YouTube. So it depends. It depends on where I'm at. It's like if I'm working, I like to have a YouTube video going. But if I'm driving, it's usually like on Spotify.
Yeah, that makes sense, Taly. It's funny because I was listening to one of your episodes, and you had this discussion with someone, and you're talking about the fact that you'd rather listen to it because you can do other things while you're listening to it.
Yeah, it's like get off the screen a little. I mean, I do put on the YouTube ones sometimes. Like you said, I'm working, and then I'll flip to the video, watch the video for like a minute or two, and then close that tab or whatever. But yeah. What about you, Fran? Where do you
Yeah. To me, it depends on the podcast. There are some podcasts that are, I just want to listen to it on Spotify because, I mean, there's not much to see, it's just listening.
Yeah.
And I like to listen to it when I'm doing like my 5K or whatever that might be so I can multitask. But some podcasts are actually pretty engaging and it's fun to watch because people, having different reactions and they're sharing screens maybe and things of the sort. So it depends on the podcast. And so. Y Combinator, for instance, I like to watch it because sometimes they have their guests and they're talking and it's a little more engaging. But the AI, the weekly AI one, I'd rather just listen to it, and that's the one there's one I also listen to. It's the Nathan Barry one from ConvertKit. He has one. It's the billion dollar creator. That's one I like to watch because he has, he's actually interacting with people. He walks to the drawing board and so forth. So it makes sense to watch. So It depends on the podcast for me.
Yeah, I mostly listen. I kind of like to watch the comedy ones just because, I don't know, it seems funnier sometimes to like watch them. The reactions, like you said, tell everyone the URL, tell us what the socials are, what to look forward to, anything to subscribe to, and we'll get you out of here.
So it's northflow.io, and on Instagram we are at Go Northflow. Yes, so it's Go Northflow on Instagram, and that's the two main platforms we're in. Just our website and Instagram.
And one last thing is, if you want to try it, it's free. You can go to our website, northflow.io, and there's a request an invite button. And we basically give an invite to everybody that comes in because we want to work, as long as you're willing to get on a call with us and tell us what's working, what's not, because that's how we're learning, and we want to build it with you. So if you have time, join in, and let's sit down and let's talk about what's painful in the process so that we can fix it. And so it's available. It's just by invitation right now due to the fact that we want to be part of the process. And so by allowing you to come in with an invitation, it also gives us the ability to reach out and say, how is it going? What are the things that are working and what's not? And so if you're listening and you think it might make sense for you to check it out, go to northflow.io and click on request an invite.
Perfect. Well, thank you guys for coming on the show.
Thank you, Eric, for having us.